the very first thing people see is your written content. They see your website, they see your captions, they see even just a little blurbs of text on your Instagram reels. That's what they see first. That's how they get to know you. Your words are the door that's opening to go into the relationship with you.
Welcome to the RV Entrepreneur Podcast, the weekly show for nomads, work campers, RVers, and entrepreneurs looking to earn a living or build a business while enjoying the RV lifestyle. This week's host is Jim Nelson. Let's settle in and enjoy the RV Entrepreneur Podcast, brought to you by RV Life.
Hello, this is Jim with RV Life, and I'm back with another twist on our usual episodes here. My very first appearance on the show was Joshua's final interview, where he talked with me about my own journey and how that led me to become a new host for the RV Entrepreneur Podcast. Well, here we are almost 1 year later, and I realized nobody has interviewed my co-hosts, Rose and Kimberly. So instead of another Ask Us Anything episode, we wanted to introduce this new Get to Know Us segment, and that's why I was honored to sit down with Kimberly Crossland. We discussed the evolution of her RV life and her entrepreneurial journey. As you'll hear, Kimberly is an excellent storyteller, but she shares much more than her backstory. Listen carefully, because Kimberly drops a number of gold nuggets for anyone growing a small business from the road. We discuss the importance of personal branding, and we talk about her 3 buckets approach as a service provider. Kimberly also provides important details about her 3 I's approach, including inspiration, intention, and interest, which can be applied to achieve success with all of your content creation and marketing efforts. But speaking of marketing, check out these quick messages from those who help make this show possible.
As summer looms, the battle to keep cool in your RV heats up. Cool RV introduces a game-changing system that boosts ducted RV air conditioner performance by an astonishing 40 to 60%. Beat the heat and join other cool campers for just $84.95 each, shipping included. Learn how at coolrv.com. That's cool with a K, rv.com. Podcast listeners can save 5% with code RVLIFE. Attention detail-oriented explorers. Do you crave adventure and thrive in independent work environments? ID Plans seeks data rock stars to travel the country surveying commercial properties. Gain or use your tech skills like laser measuring and 3D cameras to gather data on everything from rooftop HVAC units to parking spaces. Challenge yourself in all weather conditions and enjoy the flexibility of managing your own schedule. This is more than a job. It's a chance to explore new places while putting your skills to the test. Competitive pay per project awaits. Are you ready to map your next adventure? Send your resume and work history to workcamperjob@idplans.com. Don't miss out.
Kimberly, thanks so much for joining me. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me. I love being here with you.
Oh, it's fantastic. We always have a good conversation, and you've got such wonderful things to say. But this is technically the RV Life Entrepreneur Podcast, so I like to ask all my guests a couple quick questions. When were you first introduced to the RV life? Did you RV as a child, or what does that look like now? How did you get into RVing, and how is it different now?
Yeah, I actually was not introduced to it as a child very much. My grandfather had a Volkswagen van. I feel like I should know the name of it. A Westphalia van. And I remember we would travel up to the Grand Canyon, but we never camped out overnight in it. We just drove up in it. But it had the stove. It was open in the back. I mean, it would have been perfect for the van life, where it had a bed that came down. Looking back on it, I'm thinking, why didn't we camp in there? But we would go up and we'd tent camp a bunch, and we'd drive it up and back. And it was nice to have the bathroom on the road, of course, because that was, especially as a child, anyone who travels with children knows that those are very unexpected bathroom breaks. You cannot plan ahead very much. So that was the extent of my RV life growing up, really. And then when my husband and I had our own children, he said, it'd be fun as if we RV'd. He would go and RV. They had a stationary RV up on a lake. And so every summer, every weekend, they'd be up at the lake. They'd be staying in their RV, but it'd always stay there. So there's one destination, and that's where they would always go. And I thought, it's not what I want. I love to travel. I grew up traveling internationally, but not domestically. And so I wanted to have my kids have that same travel experience. And I knew that we weren't going to take them abroad right away. I didn't go abroad until I was 14, I think. It was the first time I really went abroad, like overseas abroad, not just up to Canada. I did that earlier. But when he said, let's get an RV, I thought, I don't want to do that because I don't want to only go to one destination. He said, no, we can have it here and then we can go to different campgrounds. I thought, let's try it. So when we had our 4-month-old, I remember I was wearing him at the dealership when we were looking for our first RV. And I had my 1-year-old in tow with me. We went up and down those stairs looking at the different rigs. And I was like, yeah, this seems really pretty fun. But are they going to be able to sleep? And so we bought our first RV on my oldest child's 2nd birthday. Went camping that weekend, only a half an hour away because I needed to know that we could go home if everything was a disaster. And obviously it was not a disaster. It was obviously wonderful. We had the best time, fell in love with it. And immediately we came back, started booking up all of our other trips. And we started booking longer trips and going further and further. And our kids they're now 6 and 8 years old and they're pros on the road. We travel as often as we possibly can because I am hooked. I am hooked on the RV lifestyle.
Oh, that's awesome. And I don't personally know your history. Have you always been an entrepreneur or did you have a typical work career first?
Yeah, I actually started my career overseas in Denmark. I was living in Denmark at the time, was not ready to move back home. I went and I did my last year of college abroad and I said I wasn't ready to leave. And so I found a job over there. Just so happened to fall into my degree was in international business and in marketing. Fell into a job where they needed someone who was fluent in Danish. I'm fluent in Danish, but I speak English at a mother tongue level, obviously, because I was born and raised in Arizona. So I got my first job working for a software company, translating from Danish to English and helping them break into the American market. This was years ago, so you wouldn't even know the name of the company now. But as software companies always are merging and growing,
Right.
and, you know, the whole drill. But it was a really awesome experience because I got to go and live in a culture that really loved travel and really loved adventure and taking time away. And there were days when it was beautiful outside. The whole office would just close down so we could all go to the beach and take advantage of it. It was really that culture and the Danish culture, which I still love and know very closely and still keep in touch with a lot of my Danish family back there that just loves adventure and loves to get away. And so when I moved back to the United States, because I did want to be closer to my family over here, I got a job. I worked for a Fortune 50 company, worked in management, and I hated it. It was 60 hours a week, and you always had to be at the office. The customer service was terrible. And not that I don't like customer service, I'm actually pretty good at it. But this particular niche, and I don't want to say what company it was, this particular niche, though, was brutal because it was just people who were having a really bad experience and they took it out on you. And so I thought, I need out of this. This is not good. I'm not enjoying it. It's working in a really terrible part of town. And I was like, no, this is wrong. So as terrible as this is, 4 days after I got married, I quit my job because then I was on my husband's health insurance. And it ended up working out fine. I got another job for a startup company, actually just a couple weeks later. And then my boss at the time poked his head in my office and said, you know what? You're married now, so I'm not going to pay you. I'm going to take that check for myself and I'll see about maybe getting you paid next week. And I thought, well, no, that's not right either because I have shown up and I've put in the work and absolutely I should be paid for it. That was the contract. You can't just take it for some fun money on the weekend. That's my money. I earned it. So I found myself at a table about 12 years ago, because we just celebrated our 13th anniversary. It was a year after we got married. So 12 years ago, I found myself at my kitchen table, and I thought, maybe this is that little divine intervention that needs to just push me over the edge into entrepreneurship, because I've always wanted to go into entrepreneurship. And off I went. I met my friend, my neighbor, for lunch the following day. She knew what I was doing for a living, that I was writing a lot. And she said, I've got a client for you already. And I thought, okay, here we go. And I haven't looked back since. I really haven't.
So what do you think it takes to be an entrepreneur? What's it mean to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Entrepreneurship requires a lot of grit. It requires you to not be afraid to roll up your sleeves. We're living in this culture where people talk about, we're against the hustle culture. And I did talk about, the Danish culture would value that time away. they would also value the time on. And we would do sprints and we would get really excited about the projects that we were working on. But then you also have to come up for air. And so being an entrepreneur, it's a lot like RVing, where you can go, and you can push because you're excited about it. When we have, I'll equate it to RVing because we're on the RVE Entrepreneur Podcast, but we have these, if you think about like a long trip, you have a destination you really want to get to. My family and I went to Ouray about a year ago up in Colorado, and that was a long drive from Arizona, but it was worth it. It was worth it to push on that drive. And you're still making memories during that. You're still enjoying the journey during it, but you're pushing because you see that destination. But then when you get there, you can come up for air a little bit. You can sleep in, you can rest, you can take a walk by the river that was right behind our campsite. You can really kind of come up for air, and then you drive home, and you have those push and pull moments. And so you need to have the grit, like I originally started saying, to be able to push through those moments, push through the hard. It's not always going to be easy, but when you can see that end destination and you can see that goal in mind, you get excited about pushing. You get excited about rolling up your sleeves and, putting on your cowboy hat and saying, let's go. We're doing this.
Right.
It's exciting, But then you can also, being an entrepreneur, you also have to know when to take that break and when to take your foot off the gas, because it's easy to get caught in that spiral, and that's where the burnout comes in. So being able to have that push and pull where you've got your clear goals, but you also have clear boundaries for yourself so you don't get bogged down by external expectations or internal expectations.
That's such a great analogy. I mean, there's so many correlations between RVing and being an entrepreneur, and you nailed some of them there. Just the challenges we face and the turns the road takes and the twists and turns. That's why I just love the concept of this show and being a part of this team. But time-wise, which came first with you? Were you entrepreneurial before you hit the road, or did you hit the road and then become the entrepreneur?
Yeah, I definitely was entrepreneurial before we hit the road. And that was a really challenging season. Actually, I think the RV life has helped me quite a bit to force me to schedule the campground. So I would take that time off. But before that, I was just working from home. We would travel once in a while, but my husband's job was very demanding. And so we were at home a lot, which meant I was at home a lot, working. And then we had our children, and I had to take my foot off the gas. I had to stop and slow down. And that was kind of a hard lesson to learn in the moment, because it is hard to go from 60 to 0. We talk about going from 0 to 60, but it's also hard to go from 60 to 0 again. And so finding that middle, that go on cruise control, I'm going to use all the RV analogies I
Sure.
can. But if you can find that cruise control where when you have to pass, and when you have to speed up, but you also know when you can just settle into your routine, settle into your systems, and make it feel good of how you're showing up.
It's interesting you talk about the speeds and such, because I see the entrepreneur and the RVer, you could attach income to the different speeds. I mean, you can't just go from 60 to 0 because there might be income attached to that cruise control at a certain speed. And you've changed gears quite a bit, and I want to get into that, to use another analogy there. But when did you first join the RV Life team, and how did you become a host of the RV Entrepreneur? How did that whole relationship take shape?
Yeah. So actually, let me go back a little bit further because it'll lead right into the answer to that question.
Mm-hmm.
When I had my children, I took my foot off the gas a little bit. It was because I was offered a single contract with a company that I absolutely love, still work closely with. But they said, if you get rid of all of your other clients and just go all in with us, you won't have to do any more marketing. You won't have to do any more, whatever. You can just focus on us, give us however many hours you'll give us, and we'll use them all, but you don't have to go full time. And I thought, this is a really good deal right now. So I took it. I took that contract, and I did eliminate all my other clients. This agency model that I was building up for my copywriting business, I thought, you know what, we're just going all in here. I eliminated that and took that client for a couple of years. Well, in 2020, right before the pandemic, I realized, you know what? I miss the marketing. I miss talking to people. I miss using my voice to put out a newsletter where I'm only ghostwriting over here. I want to be me. I miss that. I miss that connection with myself, because the entrepreneurial life is so much about our ideas that we get to bring out into the world. So even though it's technically a contractor, freelancer, it wasn't feeling like myself anymore because I couldn't do the marketing. So in 2020, right before the pandemic, like I said, I quit that contract. I actually didn't fully quit. I just said, I need to scale back and I need to be able to take on other clients again because this is how I'm feeling. And they understood it. And they were so kind. And like I said, we're still working together. But from there, I started to use my voice again. And I got swooped up by an online business coach, got put in that world, mentoring other entrepreneurs and doing her copywriting. I was ghostwriting, but I was also still being able to use my own voice. And I decided after I ended that contract as well, I just decided I was going to create my own program. And I realized about a year later, I thought, you know what, this is not actually as aligned with me as I thought, because what happened was I started to go broader and broader and broader. And that got very confusing. But I was very good at certain things, as we all are. We're all very good at certain things. And so RV Life invited me to speak at the RV Life Summit, RV Life Roundtable it was, in Montrose, Colorado in 2022. And I said yes, because it was one of those narrow areas where I could speak very confidently on it. And so I said, yeah, that sounds like fun. I love talking about community and building up community. And from there, they opened up the door to co-hosts, and they were looking for other co-hosts to help Joshua at the time. So I put my name in the hat and I thought, yes, absolutely. That sounds really fun. I've done podcasts. I had my own podcast at the time. And lo and behold, they said yes, thankfully. And I've been on the RV Life team ever since. Through all my other changes, this has stayed constant, which is nice.
That's fantastic. And it's obviously worked out very well. But you've mentioned something there about the relationship you had with a certain client. And I think it's great that you were in the driver's seat there and able to, say what you needed to say. And luckily they stayed on board with you. In a previous life, when we were doing our marketing firm, we had one client that was like 20 to 30% of our business, and they just shut the doors. It was during the dot-com boom. And being on the opposite side, it was like we were stuck. This was long before our RV life, but it led us to, to start putting a lot of irons in different fires and growing the things, which you've done. So you've done a lot of different things working on the road as an entrepreneur. What have been your biggest challenges while juggling the different endeavors? I mean, maybe you're passionate in all of them, or one's making money, but you're not as passionate. So when you're doing all these different things, what's been the hardest part of keeping all those balls in the air?
Yeah, the hardest part was actually kind of surprising. It surprised me anyway. And the way that I approached my business, because you're absolutely right, it is very scary to be relying on one client for a lot of income. 20 to 30% is a lot of income. There have been times, this particular client, I was relying on them for 100% of my income, which was really scary. And I shifted over and I had my course and I had my membership all on growing a business from the road. The biggest challenge that I found was the way that it was my own mindset. Because when I would show up on those coaching calls, when I would listen to the wins and I'd listen to the losses and I'd listen to the hardships, I took them all on my shoulders. And I had a very hard time taking on everybody else's business. And they were not asking me to. This was all me. This is all me that did this. But it's one of those hidden things that I don't think get talked about enough. When we get really overwhelmed with trying to be all things to all people. Mm-hmm. And entrepreneurs can very quickly fall into that trap of trying to do it all and be it all for everybody. Because so often a client will, you hear about scope creep. They'll say, oh, you can do copywriting for a website. Can you also design it? Well, yeah, I can. Should I? Probably not. I'm not a great designer. I know how to do it, but I'm not a great designer. Well, I was seeing that creep into some of my coaching calls. I said, yeah, I can walk you through how to use this, but that's not my skill set. I know how, but it's not my zone of genius. And so one of the big challenges is feeling myself drift out of that zone of genius and then feeling that guilt for drifting away from that. Because, like I said, just because I can doesn't mean I should. And I started to hear that phrase over and over in my head, and I thought, I need to scale back. And so 8 months ago, it was probably the hardest time in my business when I shut everything down. And I felt like a failure. I felt like an imposter. We've all felt those feelings as entrepreneurs. And if you haven't yet, you probably will. And it's okay when you're in those feelings because it's a learning moment. And like to use the analogies that we were using earlier, took my foot off the gas and I thought, I need to go back to me. And so every single day I started journaling. What do I really want? What do I really want out of this business? What kind of lifestyle do I really want? Do I want to be on Zoom calls all day? No, absolutely not. I don't want to be tied to Zoom calls. I love conversations like this, don't get me wrong. And I loved my coaching calls. Those are the highlight of my month. But I knew that that was not where I wanted to land, because what we were discussing on the coaching calls was good, but I felt like I could be more impactful in other areas. And so being able to start to peel back those layers and every single day say, what do I really want? What do I really want? That helped me figure myself out a little bit better, become stronger in my business as an entrepreneur. And now the way that I'm able to show up, I'm able to make more of an impact. And I don't feel that same weight on my shoulders of having to do it all and be it all to all these people. Because in the meantime, in these 8 months of looking at what I want to do, what I really want to do, where my zone of genius is, I've also been forging new connections. I've been meeting people who, if someone asks me to design a website, I can say, I'm not the right one to do that, but I know so-and-so who can. If somebody asks me to open the door to, certain other areas of business, I have people I can point them to. And we form this relationship almost like just this very organic partnership where we naturally just refer each other. And now I can do what I do best. I am a great writer. I love to write. Give me that blank screen with the flashing cursor, and I'm excited to put words on the page. I know not everybody is. And so now we have a business where there is a demand and I've got the supply, and I can teach it. I can help others through the messaging, or I can do it for them. And so the way that I've come out on the other side of this big challenge is, to your point about putting all your eggs in one basket financially, is you can figure out your zone of genius and then figure out different ways you can show up for the people that you want to serve. But it all comes down to one core offer. I wrote in my last newsletter, it's all about narrowing your arrow. If you can narrow your arrow, you can hit the red dot in the middle of the target much easier than if you weight down that arrow and go wide with something that seems like it should be easier to hit the red dot in the middle of the target, but it actually isn't, because it's going to go a roundabout way to get there. It's going to be weighted down on the journey there, and you're never going to quite make that mark. And so being able to really understand what you're good at is going to help you serve others better, make a bigger impact, and you're going to love your business so much more.
I can totally relate to that. And I love how you call it the zone of genius or the scope creep. I can totally relate to that because my biggest challenge as an entrepreneur has been saying no. Like, yes, I can. I can do that. I can do everything. And sure, I can. I've been doing it for our own business and myself for many years. But should I, like you said, just because I can, should I continue offering that to my clients? And I've definitely pulled the reins back on that. But for longtime clients who I now consider friends, it's just so hard to say no sometimes. And even the close long-term clients that used to be big money makers, but now they're more friends, when I get that text, I'll just jump on it and respond to it. And I need to kind of rein that in a bit more and focus on, like you said, focusing on the one thing that we do best. Because if you do it best, you will make money at it and you'll enjoy doing it. So you kind of touched on these changes in your business, but you've definitely found your groove now. Can you kind of expand on these businesses and tell us what you're focusing on now and why you changed gears?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have somewhat folded the name Roadpreneur. I mean, I still own it, so nobody go and try and take it. But I've folded that name and I'm really operating under KimberlyCrossland.com again. Part of that was because I wrote a book and people will naturally want to tag the author as their name, which makes total sense. So that was part of it. But also, I just want to be me. And I think that there's such power in just saying, you know what? I have something I can do really, really well, and I'm going to offer it. When you have a brand name, there's nothing wrong with having a brand name, but for me, it was feeling too big and too confusing. Confused buyers don't buy. And it was very hard. I found my biggest challenges of making sales, especially during launch mode, especially in writing my own copy, was trying to clarify what the heck I could promise these people because it was so broad. And that started to become too much. And so now I'm going back to my roots. Like I said, when I worked in Denmark and lived in Denmark, I was writing marketing copy. I loved it. I took the translations and I made it sound and fit into the American culture because I understood the culture. There's nuance to everything. I'm also really good at taking boring copy and boring businesses and making them sound interesting. And so I have that knack. I know how to write really well, and that's what I'm focusing on. And so what I did is I realized, okay, that's where I need to be focusing. I love the writing, and I know a lot of people don't. I know how to make writing really impactful and really interesting and compelling. a lot of people struggle there and they spend a lot of time there. I can now save them time while making them money. So why wouldn't I go in that direction? But then I also broke it down even further because I didn't want to just do a freelance model. To me, that doesn't align with the RV entrepreneur lifestyle because you're always on the Zoom calls. You're always having, you can only trade so much time for money. So while I will still take on limited numbers of clients every single month, I've also decided I want to help teach other people how to do it and empower other entrepreneurs to do it themselves. Because just like I was getting tired of ghostwriting for that client, some people don't always want to have a ghostwriter. They want to do it themselves. They just want a little bit of extra education or guidance on how to do it themselves. Maybe they don't hate writing, but they just don't know how to do it quite well yet. And they want to learn. I love learning. Teach me all the things. It's so fascinating to learn. I love it. I understand that other people are the same way. It feels really good when you can learn something and you can do it yourself. And I work with entrepreneurs, so we have that inside of us. We want to do it ourselves. We get excited about it. So now I'm also offering courses on how to do it yourself. And then I'm also coming very soon after this podcast airs. I have a membership-ish kind of group coaching membership program. I don't know exactly the right word for it yet, but it's going to be where I can help you every single month. You'll get my eyes on it, but you're going to be doing it yourself. It's this collaborative approach that I'm really excited to bring out where I can offer the guidance, I can offer the frameworks and the structure, but it's not formulaic because you get to learn how to make it your own and you don't have to overthink it. So we have a 3-prong approach, a done for you, a done with you, and a done by you approach. And having that 3-prong approach can work for any business. So if you're an RV entrepreneur listening and you're thinking, well, I know how to do, for example, graphic design really well, start trying to figure out how you can break it up into those 3 different buckets. A done for you approach is obvious. That's where you're doing the work for them. But if you want to take your foot off the gas a little bit and not always having to be working with clients, because that's exhausting and difficult, what's one way that you can do something with somebody? Maybe you spend a month with them, coaching them through the process. Now they feel empowered and you feel good and you've all made money. Or what's a way that you can teach them how to do it? They can do it themselves, a DIY approach. They can learn from you. They can take your expertise and you can give it to them and they can learn from you. And that just becomes a very reciprocal relationship. They're more likely to refer you and it all works to grow in the long run.
Are you ready to elevate your RVing adventures? With RV Life Pro, you're not just getting a service, you're gaining a reliable companion for your journey. From planning your trips with precision to navigating with confidence and even connecting with a vibrant community of fellow RV enthusiasts, RV Life Pro is your all-in-one solution. Don't just dream about the perfect adventure, live it. Visit rvlife.com today and discover how RV Life can enhance your RVing experience.
And when they're learning from you, it's almost better to be yourself. So I wanted to jump back to the personal branding thing, because when you're offering such an intimate service as a brand, Roadpreneur, it doesn't seem as one-on-one or as connected as Kimberly Crossland. So talk about the importance of like personal branding or branding versus personality since you're going through this right now.
Yeah, it is an interesting transition for sure. It's one of these things where I'm scrubbing Roadpreneur off, which I loved the name. I still do love the name because it speaks volumes to where I'm going and what I can, my identity is kind of tied to that. However, like you said, I know that the identity of my clients is not always tied to it. So while I do help freedom-focused businesses and entrepreneurs, they don't always necessarily have to be on the road. Maybe their freedom is they want to take a few days off to be with their children. They don't want to have to stress about if their kid gets sick and they have to cancel a bunch of calls for the whole day. They don't want to have to worry about all these different things. They want to have the freedom to take a summers off, to not have to put their kids into summer camp all summer. They want to be able to travel with them, or they want to be able to just be with them and soak up that time with them. Or maybe freedom looks like caring for aging parents. That's another side of the coin where you want to be able to care for the aging parents. And so I'm really moving in my personal brand by shifting back to being just Kimberly Crossland. I'm really good at what I do, and I know that. And that's much easier to speak to than speaking under a brand. I can speak about me and I can speak my story. I can use my voice, which is important because that's what I teach my clients how to do. That's what I teach my customers how to do. That's what I put, my entire brand on, is helping others find their voice. If I'm hiding behind a brand, it's a lot more difficult to say, well, but I'm Kimberly Crossland, but I'm also a roadpreneur and I'm going to help you find your voice. It just doesn't quite stick. I'm finding my voice. I've found my voice. I've connected with my voice and then reconnected with my voice. I know how to do this really well, and I can help other people do it too. So anytime you're working with something that you're very, very skilled at, being able to put your name on it, our name means so much. So being able to operate under that personal brand forms that organic relationship. It forms, you can say, we'll use you as an example. I'm Jim, and I'm really good at whatever, fill in the blanks. You're good at so many different things. So you get to fill in the blank with whoever you're talking to, but you get to form that conversation. You get to show up as a human, which goodness gracious, don't we need more of that in the world? It's just people being people and not trying to be something else. Get to just be us. And it feels so good.
It does. And after 25, 30 years, I'm finally realizing the benefit of it. I wear lots of hats, like you said, but in the tripods world, I'm tripods. I'm the man behind the curtains. I've always been the admin guy. But I'm also an author now, writing Be More Dog and the Tripods books. So it's important to be known as Jim Nelson. And when I'm on podcasts with veterinarians, people do need to know me. So it's hard, but it's well worth it once you get there. And we've talked about writing quite a bit. You've kind of found your groove and you're focusing on that. So why is copywriting and content creation really important for RVers in particular and other working nomads? What is it about the writing and the content that people need to know?
Yeah, especially for nomads, this is extremely important because your writing, 99%, that's not a solid statistic. I'm just kind of throwing it out there, but let's say 99%-ish of people start their relationship by looking at the glass rectangle in front of them. That is their computer screen or their phone. And they're on there researching who they want to work with. They're finding people on Instagram or signing up for their newsletter. They're getting to know you that way first. All of that is written content or verbal content. You need to have written content in all these pieces, in the captions on Instagram, in your captions on YouTube, your show notes for podcasting. There's always written content there. And that content has to serve multiple purposes. First off, it has to be you. It has to be your voice. Someone has to connect with it beyond fluffy words and fluffy language. When we're on the road and we're on the back roads and we're exploring, we're hiking, we don't want to cut that short. You can't always get on the phone with people, nor do our audience really want us to always get on the phone one-on-one with them. That comes further in the customer journey. The very first thing people see is your written content. They see your website, they see your captions, they see even just a little blurbs of text on your Instagram reels. That's what they see first. That's how they get to know you. Your words are the door that's opening to go into the relationship with you. And so when you know how to use those words persuasively, compellingly, so that someone can read those and be like, dang, they understand me. How did she get between my ears? How does he know that this has been such a big challenge for me? You can tug on those emotional heartstrings and their purse strings when you're on the road just through your writing. And so it's really, really important that we hone in that message. Not only hone it in through the writing, of course, that's my forte, but also when you have that clear message on your website and you've worked through your messaging, it now becomes a lot clearer how you're going to speak to people when you do meet them, in a speed networking call like we had for RV Entrepreneur a couple months ago, or when you meet them at the campground and they say, well, what is it that you do? Being able to have a good answer behind that, not something, well, sometimes I do this and I really like this. You're able to hit it home and say, no, I help XYZ do this so that they can fill in the blank with the transformation that you deliver to them. Now they get it. And even if that's not your person, you've now stuck in their mind because it's very clear what you offer, and then they can go and refer people to you. So without those words, without having that solid messaging behind us, it's very hard for anybody else to buy from us because they don't know what we do. And that's not their fault. The onus is on us to really understand our message and how we can clarify that and get that out in front of people so that they can talk about us in the rooms that we're not in yet.
Totally. I've always been an advocate for the power of the written word because I think reading requires action. You have to actually digest those words and process it yourself. And you mentioned reels where, when it comes to video and such, it's being fed to you. So the message is basically being told to you rather than you learning it. So let's talk about content creation for a minute. I mean, there's so many quote unquote content creators, specifically RV content creators that are just only focusing on YouTube. They're doing reels or long-term video. What other type of content is beneficial or necessary for growing a business, a nomadic business?
Yeah, I am a huge advocate for email. And I don't think it gets a good enough reputation, although that is changing. More and more people are seeing the value of newsletters. But here's why. And especially when you're an RV content creator, being able to have your email list means that you own a key to getting in front of those people. So for example, if YouTube, which it has done this before, I've heard it across all industries, if YouTube shuts down your channel or takes down your top performing videos for whatever reason, a lot of times it's an accident. You didn't do anything wrong, but there's some little thing that triggered it and it's going to take a little while to come back. If you don't have ownership of some kind of those viewers and a way to connect with them personally, it's going to be very hard to regrow your audience. We talked earlier about losing those 20 to 30% of the clients that take 20 to 30% of your income. Well, the same is true as a content creator. You have to be able to have a way to reach the people who want to hear from you. And so your email list is the only way to do that. Instagram can flag your account, or, you can get hidden by the algorithm. We can talk about that for days, but the email, that never really gets hit. Yes, you want deliverability rates high and you want to make sure you don't go in the spam folder, but that's a lot easier to beat than having to battle this algorithm that's constantly changing. Your website is the same way. SEO is very important, but you're also consistently battling the algorithm. Once someone lands on your website, you've won those eyeballs. You've won those eyeballs on your YouTube videos, on your podcast. You've won the, your earbuds, whatever it is, you've won that attention, and you need to capture that attention and then nurture it, because so often you'll subscribe to an email list. Maybe it's for a free download. Maybe you're just curious, and then they forget about who you are. And so you have to consistently show up and nurture them. That's not to say bombard them, but you have to consistently nurture them. Another way that's really not being tapped into a lot, but is very impactful, is SMS marketing. I know that's a lot of people don't love it, but when it's done really well, you can send a quick little text message every day or every week and just say, here's a thought that I had from you. Here's a little nugget of inspiration that you can take with you throughout the week. Now you're on their phone, and your email is also on their phone, and so is a podcast. I get that too, but now you're in the more of like the personal spaces on their phone, where it feels more relational than like doom scrolly-ish. And that's not to say there's not a space for all the other places. I love Instagram. I've had a lot of fun lately creating reels. It's kind of become like, I'm enjoying it actually. Not everyone does. That's fine. I'm not on YouTube because I don't enjoy the editing process for YouTube, frankly. I kind of wish I was at sometimes, but it's not my corner of the web right now. Wherever you feel the most comfortable showing up and you enjoy showing up, don't stop that, but direct them somewhere where you can take that ownership and really progress that relationship.
It's great that you mentioned the email marketing, because I just recently had a podcast episode with Liz Wilcox, and she is a guru when it comes to email marketing. And she said, in the inbox, you own those eyeballs. Someone has opted in and they chose to pay attention to you. So that's where your messaging is going to make its greatest impact. And I'll drop a link in the show notes to that episode as well. But what do you say to those people who say, I can't write, or they hesitate to share their writing, or think they really don't have anything interesting to say? Where do they begin?
Yeah, well, I have the 3 I's, I call it. So the first I is inspiration. It's okay sometimes to go out there and look at what's resonating. A lot of times when someone says, I can't write, I don't like writing, it's because they don't like the way they're writing. And if you can go out there and get that inspiration to say, oh, this feels so boring to me, or I don't like it, or it doesn't sound like me, it's because you're trying to fit into someone else's voice. When you can go out there and say, oh, but I really love the way this person writes, go and follow them, go consume their content. And you're going to start to pay attention to what really stands out. Why does that make me so excited? Why is that so compelling? And you can really dive into, that's my voice because I love it. Whatever you're going to resonate with, that's your voice. And that's how you can start to get reconnected with it. And then be really intentional. That's the second I, intentional about your message. Because confused buyers don't buy. I think I already said that. And we want to be very clear with that. We want to be very, we can get very kitschy and everything, and that's fun. But if someone doesn't understand what they're buying, then they're not going to ever take that next step. So we have to be very intentional with what it is we sell, what it is we offer, and be very clear on that. when you're clear on that, it's easier for you to show up and write. I just said that I love reels. It's because I just realized that I'm not trying to be all the things to all the people. I'm being very intentional. I will talk to you about writing. I'll talk to you about using your voice, and I'll talk to you about the mindset that it takes to share your voice, because it is difficult. And I understand that and have a lot of empathy for that too. So you have to be inspired by your own writing, inspired by someone else's writing, so you can get inspired by your own. You have to be intentional with the message that you're delivering. And then the third I is you got to make it interesting. So magic is in the editing process. That's where you can get that messy first draft out, where you kind of pull bits and pieces and you get really intentional about the message and hodgepodge it together. And then you go back and you make it interesting and you make it compelling and you add your own flair to it. And that process does not have to take very long. It really doesn't. And then you hit send. And you know what? You don't care if there's typos in there. Yes, do your best not to have typos. I'm not saying intentionally put the typos in there, but also don't stress about them. Don't stress about it, because I will tell you, one of my very favorite authors, I'm not going to out her because it can sound like what I'm trying to say is a dig, but I don't mean it that way at all. But one of my very favorite authors, I buy every single book that she writes. She sent an email a couple months ago and it had 3 typos in it. And I thought, yes, she's talking to me. This is really her writing. This isn't some AI generated nonsense. I wanted to use another word, but I filtered myself for this episode. It's
Hello,
not
human.
AI. It's exactly. It's really her. That's awesome. Now, you take that concept, just like you were talking about, Liz Wilcox said, you're forming that relationship with them, but now you really know. She was sitting at her computer, putting her fingers to the keyboard, thinking about me. And that's a really good feeling, and that's going to stick. So yeah, like I said, don't try to have typos. That feels forced. But if typos occur, that's okay. Say, oh, that was me. I'm human. Sometimes I'm a writer, and sometimes I end a sentence with a preposition. Oh, well, I'm human. But that's conversational.
And it can be compelling because you can totally relate. It's more of a conversation and it feels more realistic. And you mentioned reels and attention grabbing things. So what advantage do you think RVers have for creating more compelling content?
Yeah. No matter what industry you're in, no matter what blurbs of text you're putting over your videos, the fact that you're outside doing cool things, even if it's you taking some B-reel, which is just, it's just basically footage that you're not speaking into the camera, for lack of a better definition. But if it's just you taking some B-reel footage of you on a hike and you're holding the phone up at your face so they can see your face, or you're pointing it down to your shoes and then, going upwards so they can see the view that you have, that visual captures. Not only does it look really cool, because we get to go to some really awesome places and we get to do really cool things. And sometimes we see wildlife that other people don't see, or we get to sit around a campfire and there's just life in that kind of a video. Not only is it that, but it's also a glimpse into your world. And immediately, like I said, no matter what the little text says over it, they now feel like they're a part of you. There's something relatable. There's something inspiring in there. There's something encouraging, and people want to be a part of that. They're compelled. And so even if the first thing they see is a campfire and then your little blurbs of text directly answer a problem that they're feeling, man, is that powerful. That's where people are going to say, oh, I needed to see this. Or they're going to forward it off to a friend that makes them think of that friend immediately. It's pairing those two together. And we have that advantage because we get to see a lot of really cool places.
And it's so important to share those experiences because there is an audience, a portion of the audience, I'm sure, that is kind of living vicariously through the nomads. And sharing those creates that connection. But it's also important, as you've written in the past, to show your vulnerability, to be vulnerable. Why do we want to not be those shiny, happy people in the van that, everyone thinks a digital nomad is living in the back of the van with the doors open looking at the beach, when that's, we know, not reality for all of us? Why is it important to show the dirty side?
Yeah, everyone's got a black tank that's got to get emptied at some point, right? We all have to deal with the not so great side. And I feel like if you RV long enough, you're going to have a blowout on the road. You're going to meet someone at a campground that maybe you don't quite mesh with. There are some downsides to it. But when you're real with it and you are not trying to always pretend to be someone through the grid, or that pretend that everything is just rainbows and unicorns, now you also allow the person on the other side of that to feel the same thing. Well, maybe it's not always going to be great. There's nothing wrong with me for not enjoying the dump station at every single campground. It's just one of those things that has to get done so that I can get to the better side, so that I can still see the next campground and travel and explore and not have a stinky RV because, a full black tank never smells great. So being able to, I don't know why I keep coming back to that.
It always comes back to talking about poop. Any campfire discussion.
We're RVers. Right. Exactly. But it's relatable and you can be vulnerable and show every side of you without having to be too vulnerable. So I want to put a little disclaimer on this because sometimes we say, be vulnerable, share every little detail, but it's okay if you don't want to. So I'm very intentional about, I don't show my kids' faces. I do that because I'm very proud of my children, very proud of my children. I'm proud to be a mom. I don't hide that part of me. But for their sake, I've chosen, and there's no judgment if you do want to do this. This is just what I have chosen. But I've chosen not to show their faces because I'm leaving that up to them. I want them to have that decision of whether or not and when they're allowed to be on social media, how they want to show up on social media. But that's me. So I do have boundaries over everything that I share. Doesn't mean that I don't share. I share the good stuff and I also share the hard stuff. It's okay. Actually, right before this episode recorded, I don't know if you saw it yet, but on our Facebook, in the Facebook group, the RV Entrepreneur Facebook group, which plug, if you're not there yet, you should go and join. You were talking about Ragnar and saying, maybe at the Hershey show, we should do like a fun run of some kind. And I said, you know what? I pretend to be a runner. I'm not. I don't really pretend that much to be a runner. I said, I'll lead the walking group because I can run, but I'm like a short runner. Like I will run for maybe a mile and then I feel like ready for my break. So, it's okay to say you don't have to be all things to all people or trying to be bigger or someone that you're not. In fact, it's refreshing when you're not. Know your limits, just be you. And it's so much easier that way because you're not trying to be more than you need to be. People want real.
And you're not hiding anything. You don't have that imposter syndrome anymore. It can be a good cure to it when you share the failures. I recently finally retired one of the very first projects I ever started that we'd never got off the ground and really didn't focus on because something else worked better. But I finally put it to bed and I shared that saying, owning my failure. So I think it's great to, fail and fail better, as Samuel Beckett said. But you mentioned something recently about owning your content. And when algorithms are the only place where your content lives, it can be dangerous. Do you think solopreneurs, or especially RVers, RV entrepreneurs, need a website when they start a business?
Yeah, this is such a touchy subject, and I am here for it. I like it. Let's talk about it. I'm glad you asked. No, they don't. I'm a big fan of just putting your ideas out there because so often we can get wrapped in this idea of it has to be perfect and I can't hit publish until all the graphics are perfectly aligned. I'm in the process of transferring my website and revamping it from roadpreneur.com to kimberlycrossland.com. And I know this is going to be a longer process. We're all a work in progress. You just have to get something out there. And so if getting something out there means hitting publish on a website that's not exactly how you want it, do it. Absolutely do it. If it means starting an Instagram, knowing that the website's going to come later, that's fine too. Get your ideas out there, make offers, see what sticks, have those conversations, because that's how you're going to gather all this data from people. That's how you're going to hear what they want. That's how you're going to be able to empathize with them and create products, create offers, create your messaging, create your copywriting that they're going to actually resonate with. But I would absolutely have it at some point in your backlog to have a website. Because without that website, without being able to gather those email addresses, it's going to be a lot harder to grow. And then you always feel at the beck and call of that algorithm. So no, you don't have to have it, but it should be in your pipeline sooner rather than later, in my opinion.
I'm glad you finally got there because I totally agree that done is better than perfect. But a personal pet peeve of mine is when I want to go and learn more about someone and the only place I can find them is their Facebook feed or their YouTube channel. I like a landing page. I like an about me page. I like to know that you own your content and you deliver it in your own space. And I want to sign up form on your website and read, like you said, the story and the content on your website. So no, it may not be necessary to get started, but I agree with you that it is kind of something you need to have in your back pocket there. So speaking of websites, I got a last question for you. Talk to me about cruising and campfires. What's that all about?
Oh man, well, cruising and campfires is kind of, right now it's become my hobby project because I'm working so hard to move everything over to kimberlycrossland.com. But cruising and campfires I started because I found a need in the RV space for more organization, not just inside the rig, but how we approach RV travel. And I love having the apps, but I also sometimes need to have my analog mode. I like putting pen to paper. I'm a huge advocate of putting pen to paper. And so specifically with packing, I need to be able to write down as it pops in my head. I'm in the kitchen and I'm writing down meal ideas, and I want to make sure I get all the ingredients for the meal ideas. I did not use my packing checklist that I've created over the years of us RVing. I did not use it on a recent trip, and I forgot chicken for our chicken sandwich dinner that we're going to have. Little things like that. I have to write it down, and I know a lot of people are like that. So the way that Cruising and Campfires got started was really about making it easier, not only for the moms who are packing, because I'm a mom who understands the overwhelm that goes into camping. I want to make camping more approachable. I want more people to hit the road. I know the RV Entrepreneur Podcast, people are already like, oh, we're already on the road. But there's a lot of people who hesitate because they're fearful of the burden of having to pack the rig or having to prepare all the meals ahead of time. It's just so exhausting. So I started Cruising and Campfires just to kind of help with that exhaustion. It absolutely is I'm going to breathe new life. And I've got a lot of products I'm working on behind the scenes, but those will come probably closer to the fall and just in time for Christmas. And then also just in time for next camping season.
And that brings us back to juggling and keeping all those things in the air. Kimberly, it's been fantastic getting to know you better. What are you most proud of, and where do people learn more?
Oh man, I'm most proud of my newsletter. Of course, I'm an advocate for newsletters because that's the moment where I really truly get to connect with people each and every week. And I love when people respond, they hit reply, and I get replies every single week. Someone replies and says, oh, that made me think of this. And I love that relationship that I'm building with my readers. So I'm most proud of my newsletter because I get to have that moment of really connecting with other people. I think it's awesome. And you can find me over at KimberlyCrossland.com. Go ahead and sign up for my newsletter and hit reply and let me get to know you as well. I'd love to do that. And then I'm also, like I said, having some fun over on Instagram. And I'm just Instagram.com/Kimberly.Crossland. I guess Kimberly.Crossland is my handle.
Fantastic. And you can find us all in the RV Entrepreneur Facebook group. So head on over there and let us know what you think. Kimberly, thanks again for joining me.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
And there you have it, folks. We now know Kimberly Crossland, our co-host here for the RV Entrepreneur Podcast. Learn more at KimberlyCrossland.com and stay tuned for the next Get to Know Us episode when Kimberly sits down with Rose Willard. And we'd like to get to know you. How did your RV life begin? What type of entrepreneur are you? You might just be the next great guest to share your own nuggets of wisdom with listeners of the show. So reach out in the RVE community group on Facebook or reach out to us at therventrepreneur.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
As summer looms, the battle to keep cool in your RV heats up. Cool RV introduces a game-changing system that boosts ducted RV air conditioner performance by an astonishing 40 to 60%. Beat the heat and join other cool campers for just $84.95 each, shipping included. Learn how at coolrv.com. That's cool with a K, rv.com. Podcast listeners can save 5% with code RVLife. Attention detail-oriented explorers. Do you crave adventure and thrive in independent work environments? ID Plans seeks data rock stars to travel the country surveying commercial properties. Gain or use your tech skills like laser measuring and 3D cameras to gather data on everything from rooftop HVAC units to parking spaces. Challenge yourself in all weather conditions and enjoy the flexibility of managing your own schedule. This is more than a job. It's a chance to explore new places while putting your skills to the test. Competitive pay per project awaits. Are you ready to map your next adventure? Send your resume and work history to workcamperjob@idplans.com. Don't miss out.